Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Bloom Seed Library podcast. I am your host, Dave Maxwell, and I'm also the founder and president of the Bloom Seed Library in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. The purpose of our podcast is to provide you with information about gardening, landscaping, biodiversity, seed saving, permaculture, and other topics that might be useful to you as a gardener or seed saver. Previous episodes can be found on podcasting platforms such as Spotify and Amazon, or by visiting our website, bloomseedlibrary.org. This episode is sponsored by First Order Painting, your premier residential painting company serving Bloomsburg, Lewisburg, Mountaintop, and surrounding areas. For all your interior and exterior needs, and now featuring kitchen cabinet resurfacing, call 570-380-4946 to speak with Josh and Ian, or for more information, visit firstorderpainting.com. Today we have a special guest and big friend of the Bloom Seed Library, Jahrell Marquez Harper. Jahrell owns a company, Seeds of Faith, here in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, which provides plantscaping, raised beds, heirloom seeds, and garden-related services for those that enjoy nature. He has given presentations at numerous educational community events presented by our seed library and is a wealth of kindness and information. Today we'll be speaking one of my favorite topics, seed starting. Jahrell, welcome. We are so excited to have you here.
How you doing, Dave? Thank you for having me, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for coming. And for those listening, this is the first Seed Library podcast where we actually have a person in person in the studio. We're not doing it by phone or anything like that. So that's very cool. So today we're going to be talking about seed starting, things like that. This is a good time of year to talk about that topic as it's spring and we're getting started. So Jahrell, I know from our friendship that you are a seed starter. And I know you start for your business and also for personal use. Could you explain how seed starting works in your business?
Yeah, well, it's honestly, I don't have like a really complicated system right now, and it's not like large scale or anything, but I simply start my seeds kind of like anybody else does in the germination trays. I do soak a lot of my seeds sometimes to get a little extra jump on them. So when I put them in the soil, they do really well. But we try to keep a little bit of a system of every 2 weeks I get my seeds started. And from that 2 weeks period on, I rotate them from my indoor greenhouse to my outdoor greenhouse. So that way they can be hardened, a little bit ready to go out into the frost or go out into that pre-spring weather.
Right.
First ones I usually start are like the herbs and things, brassicas and Brussels sprouts, of course, because they take forever to get started, or to get growing, to get your harvest. So I start them pretty early. And like I said, every 2 weeks I get everything going and I slowly rotate it outside. And I try to really keep up on it as best as I can. Sometimes it's a one-man show, and every once in a while my wife jumps in and I have a few friends that help out also. But for the most part, starting those seeds, we get on it about mid-February, and then just kind of rotate and keep it moving. So that way, by the time March, May comes around, there's a full greenhouse going and those starters are ready to be in the ground.
That's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, honestly. I think seed starting is a great way to get yourself ready for the garden, because it's like a little miniature garden to start right there, where you work with the humidity and the watering and you get to know your plant a little bit. Right. And then you let it out into nature and, it gets a little bit more serious, but you already know what you're working with at that point. Yeah.
I like starting seeds early too, because it's a little too early for anything to be turning green outside, but like when you start the seeds inside, it feels really good because you start seeing little green poke up, and it feels
winter pick me up.
Yeah, it feels like spring's right around the corner, and it's very exciting. You mentioned when you were talking about getting seeds started and you sort of rotate and harden off. Something I didn't know about for a long time when I was starting seeds was hardening plants off. So I get these really tall, leggy plants that would just fall over. Yeah. And I sometimes see on forums online or on Facebook people saying the same thing. Why are my plants falling over? What are some of the ways that you, when you're starting seeds, that you sort of harden things off? Maybe some advice you could give listeners to.
Well, yeah. I mean, some of the ways you can harden your plants off a little bit, before you get them out, to get them a really good start, is you could actually, you could use a fan. Like when you're getting your seeds started and you have them indoors, by putting a fan on them, it actually gives them a little bit more flexibility. It allows them to move around. and they build up an outer stem. You know, the outer stem of the plant actually gets a little bit stronger and allows it to support itself when it's dealing with real wind or real, animals or anything brushing through it out in the wild or out in nature, of course. Another good way to harden off your plants is, of course, putting them outside just for a little bit into the sun, and not in direct sun, of course, because they're little seedlings. They can't take that much sunlight.
Right.
But if you put them out into, an indirect area or indirect sunlight area, they'll get used to the sun exposure. They'll get used to the cold a little bit. And you don't want to do this when it's freezing, of course, but just before spring starts, when it starts to warm up, you get a nice warm day, you put them out for a little bit. It helps them get used to that weather change. It helps their cells to kind of expand and, shrink a little bit, and they realize what's going on in nature, and it gives them that pre-jump on what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Another way you could do it, and I've tried this myself, is using colder water or warm water when you're watering your plants. It helps the roots, so that way they get used to the cold weather also.
Oh, right.
It's another one that's a little quick change. You don't necessarily have to do it, but it gives them a little bit more dexterity when it comes to them growing. They get used to shock. They get used to things, subtle changes, because that's going to happen in nature.
I think we talked about this before a little bit. I had never thought about hardening the root system.
Yeah.
And in my mind, you just harden the plants, but then, I often have started seeds on little heating pads. So, this perfect, comfortable, humid soil, and then you go plant it in the cold dirt.
Yeah.
And so, but I'd never really thought of that until we had a conversation the other day talking about that. So that's really good information.
I actually, and I have to say, I believe I only do that with the brassicas, like the early vegetables that you plant.
Oh, right.
Pretty much early spring stuff. I do that with those guys before I put them outside because, of course, the soil it's not frozen, but it's still pretty cold.
Yeah.
And we will have nights that are still a little below freezing. But right now, we're kind of past that. I think we're in the clear.
Yeah, we're getting close.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I already got some things out right now, but I don't have anything that, wouldn't do good past the frost,
Right. Yeah, it's tempting. Around this time of year, I'm always tempted to start stuff or to put seeds outside. And I think I'm going to take a little bit of a gamble and just do it. But I've done that enough years in a row where then we get that cold snap and it sort of ruins it.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to force myself to be more patient. And
if anything, I've learned the right ones that I could put out.
Yeah.
You can get away with some. You can get your hands in there and, pop some peas out there.
Right.
I sprinkle my radishes. I made a little line and put some lettuce out there, because those guys they'll germinate in the cold weather. And then once the spring starts, they're already ready to go. They have their root system, they're looking for the sun, they're looking to go up. So that's when I get my little itch in sometimes. Yeah. And I tried it this year and it worked. In about February, it was like late February, I put some nasturtium seeds outside and they didn't do anything until it got warm outside. And I thought for sure that they might, freeze or might mess them up. But I believe they're one of those that can kind of deal with the cold a little bit. At least the seed could for a little bit. I don't know about the plant itself. I know it's not a perennial, but I like, little experiments like that. So it's never too late, to try some new things when you see what you want to sow.
It's interesting. We have some volunteers that are annuals coming up right now that should not have survived the winter. And I don't know if we just had a more mild winter,
we did,
but I'm surprised that things that should definitely be annuals are coming up. And
we actually had a very, very mild winter. I'm not sure if many people noticed, but witch hazel was kind of blooming very, very sporadically throughout the winter. And once it got to about January, February, we got a few warm days and they started blooming and then they died off again.
Oh, wow.
So, we didn't get that really deep frost that most perennials need to go to sleep.
Right.
So a lot of them stayed awake. A lot of the seeds didn't die off because of that.
That's interesting.
Somewhat of a blessing.
Yeah, I guess it is a little bit of a jump start on our plants this year. So, when you're talking about your trays or starting, what is your either favorite medium or what is a medium you usually use to start your seeds in? Is it just straight dirt? Is it compost? Tell us a little bit about what your favorite medium is.
I definitely try to stay away from the dirt. Soil is the best thing to use for sure. Yeah. It's a joke that my professor says a lot. But my favorite medium from my seeds would be a Pro mixture. It's Pro Mix and Mycorrhizae. It's a mixture that you can buy. It's a Pro Mix, of course.
Okay.
And then I mix that with perlite and peat moss.
Okay.
I use those two things, or instead of the peat moss, you could use cocoa coir as a substitute because it holds just as much moisture. And I would also, depending on where your seeds are, if you decide to transplant them, when I first start them, I use the cocoa coir, the perlite, and the Pro mixture. But once I transplant them, I make that a Pro Mix cocoa core a Pro Mix perlite and a compost mixture. So that way they have that feeding. Because of course, once your babies get past, 3-4 weeks or they get their true leaves, they're ready for a good feed. And that's when I pot them up into either a bigger pot or they're ready to go outside. So I try not to feed them right away. That's one pretty good rule with seedlings, is that you don't want to feed them too early, or else they will get leggy. They may burn, you might lose the tips, or they won't grow right at all. So it's kind of like a child. You don't want to give it too much information when it's young.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Wait till it gets a little bit older. So that's why I use that mix, with the cocoa core, the perlite, and the Pro Mix, is because it's barely any nutrition. It's just there to hold water for them, just to keep them moist.
Okay, but it's not so. I've had the issue, and I've talked to a few people who have the issue when they're starting seeds that the stems sort of right by the soil sort of turn dark, or they the plant looks like it's almost rotting at the ground level. Would that be because there's too much moisture in the soil, or something along those lines?
I would say yes, too much moisture in the soil.
Okay.
The weird thing can happen also if there's too much nutrition in the soil, it will hold a lot more moisture. Because the seedling that small can't uptake that much nutrition, so it's gonna stay wet for a while. It's gonna stay in suspension in a sense.
I see.
So yeah, I mean, it really does help to not have that much moisture.
That makes sense. Do you, when you water seedlings, do you water from the top, or do you sort of water from the bottom?
I do a bottom water, and I keep a humidity dome on top.
Okay.
So when I bottom water, I do very, very little bit, and then I keep the humidity dome on there, so that way the humidity waters the plants. I try not to get that soil saturated as best as possible. Humidity is your best friend, so it's like you always want it around, but every once in a while you need a break. But at the same time, you need it there. It kind of needs to be there.
We've used, we just put sort of like cellophane or saran wrap over the top of seed trays too, just to keep the humidity in.
That absolutely helps too. I mean, once they get a certain height, that becomes a problem. But that does help to keep the humidity in to give them a good start. But as seedlings, once they pop up and you see the leaves and everything, I would recommend bottom watering. It cuts down on diseases. It cuts down on pest issues also, because a lot of fly and a lot of larvae, they'll lay their eggs in the top layer of that soil. If it's wet and moist, they got a perfect, area to lay in. So if you bottom water, kind of prevents that also and gives your babies a good start.
Oh, that makes sense. So when I first was starting seeds, I was just starting them on a windowsill, and I'm more advanced now. I have different grow lights, and could you tell us a little bit of options for lighting seeds? Like, let's say right from you don't have grow lights up to if you have grow lights. Like, so what are good options to give your seeds light if you're starting them inside?
This one's, I got to go back to when I was actually like really struggling to get it going, and I really wanted to. You got to have that passion for sure, and you start chasing the little lights in your corners and every little lighted corner of your house. But I would say definitely like find the best, is it south facing window? That you can find. You want to find the best south facing window that you can find and get those seedlings there pretty much if you don't have any light whatsoever. If you have like a fish tank or any kind of other fluorescent lighting in your house, you can use that, because that's also really, really bright and it kind of mimics the sun. It gives it a little bit more, you get more lumens off of those for sure. So you could definitely do it that way. That's really the only other way, other than, getting yourself a little miniature light that, gives enough light for your plants.
Right.
That's kind of one of the best ways to do it. But yeah, you can put it in a window. You don't necessarily need a heat mat. It only helps if that window is really, really cold.
Right.
You want to give that warmth because it kind of mimics that early spring, and it gives your plants that start. It allows them to kind of wake up and know like it's time to do the thing.
Right.
So as far as, mimicking that warmth, you can use a heater. You can use your refrigerator. Actually, I've seen a lot of people start seedlings on top of the refrigerator because it's warm up there. It's actually a really warm area, and it gets humid up there apparently too. So that's another one.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say get creative. Get as creative as you possibly can. And if you have any reptiles whatsoever, utilize their area. Utilize things on top of their tanks or the space around it, because they generate a lot of heat, and you can use the humidity off of the top of their tanks. I wouldn't necessarily, put your seeds in there because of all other kind of diseases and things that could cross over, but use their lighting, use the heat, use the ambient heat that comes off of their lamps or something. You can definitely use it in that way.
So really, I mean, it sounds like, I think both of us when we started, we were just kind of experimenting,
Yeah,
and you learn as you go. But it seems to me like there's kind of no wrong way to start.
There's no wrong way to start. The only wrong way to start is to not start.
Yeah.
So it's like we all just experiment. And that's the fun part about the plant world and, meeting new plant people is that we're all just experimenting.
Yeah.
And everybody gives you the room to mess up. Some people don't. But for the most part, if they're a true plant person, they allow you to grow and stretch and try new things because that's how we learn new things.
Yeah, true.
So by all means, find those lighted corners. You get to know your area a lot better too.
Yeah.
You realize it's warmer in this room than it is in the other room. There's more light in this room than there is in that room. And things start to look different to you in your house too.
It's interesting for those listening. So the room that we are in, it's a home studio. However, before the podcast, this room was where I would start all seeds. So we would put a folding table in this room, and we had grow lights that were on a tripod. They were I think they were $15 for a sort of a tripod that had 3 lights that would shoot off. We'd put a big table in here, and we would put all of these seed trays, and we would put 100 or so plants. And this room was the seed starting room. So it's kind of interesting and what I guess poetic in a way that it's where we do the Seed Library podcast.
That is pretty awesome, honestly.
But now we don't have a space to do it because the pets will destroy it. So
they usually get onto it really quick. They want some of the goodness too.
Yeah. So methods to start seeds. I know there's different ways to start different seeds. I know, I guess we don't have to get too into scarification and stratification and all of that, but I know there are different methods to start seeds. Some people soak certain seeds. Some people just put in the soil. Do you have any specific methods that you tend to use that you think are the best methods to getting seeds started?
Well, yeah, I spoke a little bit of it earlier. Moisture is one thing that I really rely on. Like I said, It's my best friend. So for a lot of seeds, I'll either soak them, make sure they get a good start. If they're a good size seed and you can soak them, it's one way to test for the germination. And it's also a great way to give them a good start. Maybe about 8 hours, 16 at the most. I would not go a full 24 because I've lost a lot of seeds that way.
Right.
But I would say 8 to 16, you see if they float or sink. If they sink, they're good seeds. And those are the ones that you can get started pretty soon. For the other seeds that are much smaller, moisture. I make sure that my medium, whatever I mix, is nice and moist. You don't want it. You want it till when you squeeze it, it stays into a ball, but you don't wring it out. So there's no water dripping. So that's like the perfect moisture right there. And that's what I use to start those smaller seeds. I put that in, whatever I'm growing them in, whatever cell tray I'm putting them in. I get my seeds in and I cap them with the humidity dome. Keep an eye on them until, probably about a week or two till the humidity dies down, and then I add more water. But that's one of my pretty cool tricks that I've learned myself is to just, balance the humidity, balance how much water they get.
Right.
And, other than that, if you don't have, a humidity dome or a seed cell tray or, a heat mat or anything like that, use solo cups. They actually work really, really well.
Right.
You can get the clear ones also. I would get some red ones and some clear ones because the clear ones are a little smaller.
Right.
You can cap the red ones with the clear ones. That way you can see what's going on the inside. And I believe I have a picture of it. That's how I started my first garden right there. Is like I had a whole roll of solo cups in the kitchen on the windowsill. And my wife's looking at me like, what are you going to do with those? Well, I'm going to build a garden out front and then I'm going to put them in there. So it's like,
we've put Ziploc bags over the top of cups too. It's nice because you can keep reusing them and you let them dry out.
That's the Ziploc method. That's another one that my daughters love doing. And we have 2 apple trees now, or 2 apple plants, and we have lemon trees too that they started because they love taking any seed that they have. You put them in a plastic bag, the Ziploc bags with the paper towel. Yeah. And, they put them on the heaters or in the windowsill. But if it's wintertime, it's on the heater. And they just sit there and they wait and they come back and check it every few hours. And, and finally when it sprouts, my Aaliyah, she always brings them to me and she goes, Dad, plant it, put it in some dirt. And it's like, all right, let's do it, baby. But that's one of the easiest ways to do it. And kids love it too, because they can see the results right away,
It's funny when we plant a seed, we check on it. I don't know, maybe every 2 hours.
Oh yeah.
From the moment we plant it. And it's like, why isn't this sprouting yet? Yeah. And so
it's great how that comes with time, right? The patience. And there's even times where you put it in the ground, even when you have your plan, you like grow it in the greenhouse, you put it in the ground and you're like, all right, give me some fruit.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I find a lot with gardening and seed starting, it's about looking forward.
Yeah.
But with this great anticipation. And as soon as it pops out of the soil, you're like, yes, this is this. Okay, give me leaves. And so you're doing the whole thing the whole season, right up until yield. And it's just a great feeling. And something that I didn't, I'd often get, I don't want to say sad, but I'd say, okay, well, the fun's over towards the end of the season until I started seed saving.
Yeah.
Then once I started doing that, it doesn't stop because now you're taking it and
man.
you're saving the seeds, you're drying them out, you're cataloging.
See, I'm a bit of an addict. That's why I sow every 2 weeks, because I know I get harvest at a random time. That it just keeps on coming. And then over the winter, I like to overwinter my peppers or overwinter something from outside, and that just keeps me caring for something all winter that I just want to take care of. So I got to make sure you make it till spring and see how it does.
That's really nice in Pennsylvania, because we do get the winters and cold winters, and so everything sort of dies back, and so that is really nice.
Gets a rest.
Yeah,
it's a long rest.
Yeah, that's very cool. So, I think a lot of listeners, I mean, really anybody who starts from seeds, probably at any skill level, sometimes you have issues. And so I'm wondering if you could explain some common issues with starting plants from seeds and potentially how to get around those issues.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, some common issues that I've actually ran into or people have brought to me. Number one, the legginess, having really leggy or really tall seedlings that are, just like 2 to 3 inches longer than you really want them to be, and they're laying over and everything. That's usually because of the light. The only real way to balance that is, well, there's multiple ways, but the best way to balance that is to get your light source a little bit closer to your seedlings. You want it to be 2 to 3 inches above them. You don't want it to be super close. You definitely don't want it touching, but 2 to 3 inches above your seedlings and slowly work it back as they grow is ideal. Another way to avoid that legginess is your nutrition. If you give them way too much nutrition and they have the light source very, very far away, they're going to reach for it. They're going to grow for it. It's going to, it's going to give them that boost to be leggy, So that's kind of a backhanded thing to look at, but you still want to be aware of the light, but you also want to be aware of your nutrition. You don't want to feed it too much thinking that, it's got all this light, it's good to go. So, but yeah, as far as legginess, I know that's a lot of issues that people deal with, and that's one of the best ways to deal with it is to get that light a little bit closer.
Okay.
Another one would be, bugs, moisture. A lot of people have issues with bugs, or you have issues with, not being able to get your moisture just right. Those two kind of go hand in hand. If you have too much moisture, even if you have a moisture loving plant, you're going to have bugs. You're going to have little flies and stuff laying their eggs in there. You're going to have little gnats, so the balance of moisture is really, really important there, where you give your plant a better success rate, and then you also cut down on the bug issue at the top and fungal issues, because fungus can actually grow up there too. You can get a lot of mold and things because of the light penetration on the water that's on the soil.
Right.
It will grow a lot of mold then. So that's why you got to balance that humidity. I can't really think of any other like bigger issues when it comes to seed starting. Do you have any that?
Not really. I mean, I think most of the time those are the common things. And I think the worst that I've experienced has always been the legginess.
Yeah.
Or, in my mind, when I was first starting, you keep that soil absolutely saturated. And it took me a bit to learn not to do that.
Yeah, now that you mention it, the little, like, you get that little white fuzz on the top. It's kind of a fungus also, but that usually happens when you have too much moisture and no airflow.
Right.
So that's one thing that I did not mention when it comes to the airflow of everything. Humidity is important, moisture is important, and light's important, but you need a sense of airflow. If you don't open that up every once in a while and allow the air to blow and move around, the water gets stagnant.
Right.
So airflow is very important, especially for your seedlings. Once you uncap them, if you take that lid off and there's no more humidity or anything, the water will be stagnant. The water won't be moving and, floating around in the air.
Right.
So airflow is very important, but that's, when you mention, the little things in the soil, that makes me think about that little fuzzy stuff that shows up when your seeds don't show up and you're like, what's that?
Yeah.
I didn't plant that.
Now, have you ever? I've had some experience where I've had the lids that you put on the seed starters, and I put that in a windowsill. Yeah. And I'm not sure if that is necessarily a good idea. I don't know if light hitting that, I know it would create a little greenhouse effect, but would that ever be too much of a problem? when starting seeds?
Yes, it could be too much of a problem. If that is direct sunlight for quite a few hours, that will heat up like really, really bad. And it'll actually, that could hurt your plants a lot, because then the internal temperature of the humidity dome is much higher than what it is outside.
Right.
You know, that sunlight might be really bright, but to them, they're getting it through the magnified water droplets that are on top of your humidity dome.
Right.
That really kicks up on the light intensity and the heat in there. And it really kind of does stunt your plants. Like, it would stunt them a lot. So if you do have your plants in a very bright window that gets full sun all day long, you want to make sure you move them out, you know, every 8 hours or so. You know, you don't want to give them too much sun within that light, you know, or you can just uncap them. Maybe they'll survive. You know, sometimes the strongest ones do survive.
Yeah.
But I don't recommend direct sunlight on the seedlings, especially if you're in a very bright south-facing window.
Yeah, that does make sense. And hardening them does make sense too, because you know, to get them ready for the randomness and the harshness of the outside. So yeah, I guess it would make sense to just try to replicate the outside situation when you're starting seeds, but in an easy, controlled environment.
Yeah, it's really hard to do sometimes, but you know, paying attention to them and paying attention to nature, it helps you kind of follow its lead in a sense.
You know, something we got, I think it was maybe 2 years ago, we got a notebook specifically for, we got it for all the gardening and everything we do, but we started taking notes on certain things. You know,
like a journal.
Yeah. Sort of like a journal. And so we can look back on it and say, you know, these plants didn't do well in this soil, or, you know, we started these seeds way too early.
That's great.
But we've learned a lot just by sort of trying to be mindful of what we do, you know, when seed starting. And I want to say too, you know, I like to say in the podcast, like one of the good things about any seed library, is that you can go and you can get seeds and you can check them out and you can plant them. And if they don't come up, it's not a big loss out of your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, with our seed library, it's free membership. The seeds are free. And so, you know, you can easily try something. If it fails, it's okay. Come back, get more, try again. And the whole point is to help people sort of learn this and learn how to do this.
I think that is absolutely beautiful. You know, even though I sell seeds, I tell a lot of people, you know, there is a seed library right there in Bloomsburg. If you're afraid to try gardening, there you go. Like, try it out. They've got a whole bunch of different varieties, different things you can try and learn. You know, I don't want anyone to waste money to try something. You know, I want you to fall in love with it, get a passion, and then I want you to support our local seed library. You know, I want you to know that this resource is right here for us. We don't have to buy anything. We can rely on each other.
Yeah. And that's interesting. And I what I like too, I mean, we buy seed, like we, you know, we have the seed library, but we also buy seeds for our personal use from things we've tried in the seed library. There are sometimes things have come through, and for zinnias is a good example. We love zinnias. And, I remember zinnia seeds came through the seed library. We took a couple to grow. And for those that aren't aware, on our property here, we grow a lot of things for the seed library. So
beautiful. If
we get, you know, let's say we get donated a packet of maybe one packet of something, and we don't see it often, sometimes we'll just grow it in order to get a lot more seeds to put in next year, into the seed library. But, you know, we were able to try certain things and we love them. And now we go and buy those every year. So, and then we try to buy, when we buy, we want to buy local. I know you and other people locally sell seeds. So, you know, for the people in the Bloomsburg area, definitely, you know, try seeds out, learn things, but then, you know, go out and support local seed sellers and the community, because it all helps. And if you support local seed sellers, you can collect seeds from that and donate it to the seed library. So it works. Right.
Try your hand at harvesting.
Yeah.
Get those seeds out. That'd be nice. Honestly, it's really cool to take your time and learn one plant and see how it flowers and how it actually comes to seed and everything. And it's a really cool journey with that one plant. So it's awesome. Right.
For sure. So, you know, I mean, some people like to start from seeds. Some people like to go to greenhouses and buy plants. I don't really think there's a right or wrong way. It's just personal preference. But, you know, we are a seed library. So I wanted to know what you think some of the benefits are from starting from seeds, starting plants from seeds.
All right. Well, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I will say some of the benefits that I definitely look forward to is I know what's being put into my seeds when they're being started.
Right.
Everybody's aware of like fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, things like that. In big production, they use a lot of those different things to actually cut down, simply because you're not growing a little tray of, 12 seeds or, 72 seeds. They're growing hundreds, thousands.
Right.
There's a lot going on in there. So there's a lot of bugs. There's a lot of bacteria. There's a lot of things floating around in the air, and they have to treat those things. Yes, they do it very mindfully, and they also do it, with education and, some type of background.
Right.
But I also, personally, I like to train my seeds up in a different way. So I definitely love it for that fact that I can use my own organic material. I don't have to put any pesticides or herbicides in them because I keep everything separated into its own environment. And then I also, if I do use any kind of deterrent or anything, it's very natural, and I balance those things. I've learned enough to know that when you balance the humidity and the airflow and you have the right medium, you don't have to worry about certain things. I use ladybugs and praying mantis quite a bit. They're my best friends. They really are the good guys. So, I mean, that's really one of the greatest benefits that I feel come from starting my own seeds, is that I know what's going into them for sure. And, another really cool benefit is that you can pick out different cool varieties, and you don't necessarily know what's going to come from that variety. But when you start your own variety, you get to learn, the process of it growing. You get to see it from the beginning, and you get to see the leaves form and everything unfurl and grow. And I love that part. Some people aren't really into that, but when you get to see something, really, really tiny that can fit into your palm, become this big thing that's feeding your family now.
Right.
I love that journey.
Yeah.
That is very, very rewarding to go from, this start date to this harvest date. So for a lot of people that don't garden, or thinking about gardening, that is a very good pick me up. It works on your delayed gratification and your determination, your willpower. How determined are you to help this thing live?
Yeah.
So I those are just my two biggest points on why I love starting my own seeds, and just the joy of it. I don't know.
Something I like about it too is learning to start from seeds means, we have some great greenhouses in our surrounding area here, but you can't get everything. And so there are certain things that, I might not be able to have a live plant shipped of this sort
This
of,
is very true.
off this odd plant, but I could get seeds shipped out. And so I like the experience of starting from seed because it gives me more, confidence to try and maybe fail, but still try, something completely different.
But at least you get to try a different thing.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that one too. There's the Aunt Molly ground cherry tomatoes.
Oh, right.
Oh my goodness. They are so amazing, but that's not something that, they're starting to sell them around there now.
Yeah.
But that's not something that you saw around here 3 or 4 years ago at all.
Right.
And when I found those seeds, and a friend of mine planted them, and I was like, what is that? It's like a grape tomato, like so amazing. But then I was like, oh wait, I can grow this. But there's little varieties like that. Like once you take some time and you research different types of vegetables and stuff out there, you may not find them in a local greenhouse, but that would be great if you purchased those seeds, if you grew that plant, and if you harvested some seeds or saved some seeds from that and share that with your community. That's really the beauty of gardening right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And one other thing I like about it too is there've been, like I said, we might start a plant or two and collect 1,000 seeds from that.
Mm-hmm.
But we have in our, the garden out here, there are certain things that we started as one little plant, and now, catnip is a good example.
Yeah.
So we grow a lot of catnip, and the part of the point of it is to try to donate it to, local animal shelters, or just give it to friends who have cats.
Wow.
But it also just smells great and makes good tea. But, we started from just a little catnip plant, and now, we can get so many seeds from that if we wanted to start, a fifth of an acre of catnip, we could probably do that, whereas going and buying all of those plants would probably break our budget. But I do like that about seed saving as well.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. So let me ask, we'll do one last question here, but what is your favorite plant to start from seed?
Favorite plant to start from seed. Oh boy. Oh, okay. All right. My favorite plant to start from seed, I have to say, is the avocado.
Oh, yeah?
It's actually a lot of fun. It's definitely close second to the lemon because I just like the way that they pop open and the way they roll out of the seed.
Okay.
But when it comes to the avocado, I like it because it takes patience and it takes like a few different methods of nature, I guess, to like really work it out. The avocado seed, and believe me, I'm still learning this. I try not to research it and I want to learn it from experience.
Right.
But I've taken my avocado seeds right out, when you eat them, you cut them or whatever, and I soak them in cold water. Okay. I will keep them in cold water for like probably an entire day. I'll keep switching it out, make sure it's cold. Then I switch it to warm water and I leave it in that lukewarm room temperature water for a very long time. And I might switch that out every once in a while, but I make sure that water is warm.
Yeah.
Once you see a crack in the seed, it's almost like, all right, here's go time in a sense. You know what I mean? You take it, you wrap it up in the paper towel situation, and you just let that thing sit for like, I don't know. Half the time I lose my patience and I just like forget about it. And I'm like, all right, fine. I'll see you when I see you. But usually I would say about a month time, when you come back and you pop it open, the root like kind of comes out of the seed and takes over the whole little side. And it doesn't make any sense because you see the root come out the bottom and there's nothing there at the top whatsoever.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And once again, here goes this waiting game again. Like, I don't know why this is my favorite one, but I think it's because it really works on my patience.
Yeah.
So I take it out of that, a paper towel, swatch out the paper towel, put in a whole new one so that way it's clean, no bacteria or anything.
Right.
Give it another month or so. And when you come back, there's going to be a little leaf. And it's like, I know it's not much, but it's very exciting. Over the course of 3 months, I finally got a little leaf, because I put so much dedication to the seed. And, it's by far my favorite because once you put it in good soil, that's when it kind of takes off.
Yeah.
That's when you see that shoot kind of grow up like Jack and the Beanstalk. And like it just keeps going and going and it starts shooting off little leaves off to the side. And like they can be a little tricky as plants to have in the home because they require like so much nutrition and everything. But they are awesome to grow from seed. They really are. I've had a lot of tricky ones that need the stratification and everything. But I kind of appreciate the seeds that give you a hard time, but then give you a pretty awesome reward. Yeah. I haven't gotten any avocados from it yet, but it's just the fact that it grows, so fast and so beautifully after all that time of that seed incubating, it finally becomes a plant. Like, and you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor in a sense. Like,
oh, well, I'm going to have to try it.
Like, yeah, it's a lot of fun. Honestly, I have 4 of them now.
Oh,
and
wow.
I just enjoy doing it. The girls keep bringing them to me and I'm like, no, I don't want any more. I don't need any more projects right now.
Well, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. So, Jahrell, I want to thank you for being here, for sharing your knowledge. This has been really great. I think that sharing this kind of information will help patrons of the Seed Library and anybody who might be listening to this podcast. So really thank you for your time and thank you for all of the information and help that you've given to me and to the Seed Library over the years here.
Thank you very much for having me, Dave. And I really hope to be back very soon. This is a great conversation. So let's have another one.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. And for those wanting to know more about Jahrell and his company, go ahead and visit facebook.com/soulseedsoffaith. And as always, we thank you for listening to our podcast. Listening, sponsoring, and donating seeds and materials helps us maintain the Seed Library, support our community, and provide content like this podcast. For more information on the podcast, the Bloom Seed Library, and more, please visit bloomseedlibrary.org. And if you'd like to reach to us for guest appearances, sponsorship, or simply to say hello, please email info@bloomseedlibrary.org. Until next time, from the Bloom Seed Library, we wish you well.